Commit to the play and don't feel like you're the worst one in the class.
It's really cool to kind of see them think outside of the box.
Sometimes those criticisms aren't necessarily right.
It's a great idea, but it has to be educational.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Green Room. I'm your host, Wesley Schofield, and I'm sitting here with Maiah Wynne, one of our live on stage guest artists for the 2019-2020 season. Say hello.
Hello.
So she's going to be playing tonight at 7 p.m. By the time you've seen this, it'll be in the past, so don't worry about it. So I'm just going to get right into it. Give me a little rundown, like how did you get into music? What was that story like?
I started playing piano when I was 3, and I started taking lessons around that age. I took them for a few years, and I've always loved the piano and writing music, playing music. It's just always filled me with a lot of joy. And then when I was about 13, I started writing my first songs that I was actually singing. I taught myself guitar and drums and ukulele and mandolin and dulcimer and organ and everything else. And it became sort of, I don't know, I was almost addicted to the feeling of learning a new instrument because it always brought new sounds. And I love writing in new genres and trying new things. And I just try to keep growing as an artist and challenging myself in new ways, and yeah, I'm still here.
Cool. Okay. So for being piano, you said you take lessons. For other stuff, is it more just organic play, or do you just sort of follow along with someone else teaching you?
Yeah, I've taught myself pretty much everything except for the piano. I don't take piano lessons anymore. I stopped when I was like 10. But yeah, everything I teach myself, or I'll watch videos on YouTube. And I love playing around with things, and once you learn a couple instruments, you start to see patterns in other instruments. You know, it's the same notes, just created in different ways, you know? And it's really fun to find those through lines. Yeah, I think it's pretty free-flowing, creative process.
Interesting. So what influences you for music? Do you take influence from other sounds, or do you try to close yourself in and be totally original?
That is, it's very challenging. I definitely notice, obviously everybody wants to be original and they want to create music that nobody's ever heard before, but it's really hard. There's over, I think, 80 million songs on Spotify alone. Dang, yeah. There's a lot of music out there. And statistically, it's going to just get harder and harder to be original. There's only so many notes that you can create and only so many patterns. But I think originality really comes from you and your emotion. I think even if you're playing, I think you and I could play the same exact song. And the way that you would perform it, the way you would connect with it is very different than the way that I would. You know, and I think that's where the originality comes from, is your personal story, your personal emotion and influence on a song, rather than trying to create something that nobody's ever heard before. I think it's really about showing the world what makes you an individual, you know? Yeah.
I love that. Wow. So who inspires your sound? Like where do you get your influences from?
That's a good question. I listened to a lot of Radiohead growing up, but I also really enjoy Nora Jones, Florence and the Machine, the Beatles, Ingrid Michaelson, Iron and Wine. I listen to everything. I feel like I've been slacking on the listening to music since I became a professional musician. I feel like my whole world is music, and so I forget to listen to other music and enjoy it, because I'm constantly creating and performing, and I think the more you do that, the harder it becomes to really listen and enjoy without thinking about all those things. And
I feel the same way about video. Like when I go and see a movie nowadays, I don't really ever just get to sit back and be like, that was great. I'm sitting there and being like, I mean, the lighting was cool. I wonder how they did that. Or I don't know about that acting. And I really pick it apart. And sometimes I like that because it benefits my craft for sure.
Exactly.
Other times I'm just like, can I calm down? Can I
Yeah.
just enjoy this?
Totally. It's so easy to lose the sense of enjoyment of art once you're creating it. It's so hard. But I'm trying to get better at it. I'm trying to get better at just listening and enjoying and appreciating art, because there's no wrong way to create music. I really believe that. I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. If you're getting something out of it, if you're creating something that makes you happy, then that's what it's about.
For sure. Yeah.
You're doing it right.
So I guess building on the topic of now that you kind of are a musician for a living.
Yeah.
Is it playing, like when you're at home, is it more of like you're practicing, you're training, or are you just like playing for fun? How has that relationship changed?
I think now that I am a full-time working musician, I think my moments of inspiration are very different. I used to come home from school or work and I would be so overwhelmed with those emotions and just crave creating music, and I would write at the end of every day. And now that my work is music, at the end of the day I don't want to write, you know. I don't it takes a lot more build up now for the creative process to start again. So I've been learning to give myself a break. It's okay to not always be inspired. I think there's this pressure to always have inspiration with everything, and I don't. I think it builds, and then I just let it happen whenever it happens, and then all of a sudden, in one day I'll write 8 songs, and even though I haven't written a song for 5 months, or I'll just wait for it to happen, and I know to not force it. And I think a lot of my inspiration right now emotionally is just about the journey that I'm on as far as a musician, and finding whatever my voice is in the industry, in the world, and yeah.
I relate with that a lot, because like every day at work, like you're designing a new flyer, you're making a new video, and while it is still like, it's so fun to be creative for a living, and like I can never take that for granted. Like I'm eternally thankful for it, but it is totally different. Like when I go home and I'm like, what do I want to make now?
Yeah.
And then I'll get inspired at like 1 a.m, and I'm like, no, I got to go to work tomorrow. I need to go to sleep. But it's like the art time is now.
Yeah.
So now that you're going around, you're playing shows, what's been an interesting thing about being a full-time musician now that you probably didn't know when you got started?
I think the biggest thing I wasn't prepared for was how messed up my schedule is. Last week I was staying up until like 6 or 7 in the morning, because I'm recording a lot right now, and we're recording in a home studio, and so to try to get as quiet as possible, we're recording at night. So it's like shifting between night shift and day shift, and then I'll be doing outreach, in the mornings, and shows at night, and staying up till 2 in the morning just from those shows. And then my schedule has been so crazy, so that's been the biggest surprise for me, because you always think about it, you're like, oh, there's gonna be late nights because of shows, but oh man, my life is a mess right now. There's no schedule. It's just all over the place, and that kind of, it's reflected in my overall schedule too. You never know what opportunities you're gonna get, and you can't plan for them. So you'll get a call, and there'll be this huge opportunity, and then you have to pause everything else and go do this. And I feel like that's my life right now. Just waiting for the next thing to happen and make everything work, and it's sort of like driving blind.
Yeah.
And someone yelling at you, go left.
Yeah.
Go right. And then you just go and hope for the best.
It's interesting once you kind of get the ball rolling with something that it feels like takes so much work to get it going, it goes really, really fast. Like in the last 2 years here, there's been so much opportunity and things just exploding that it's like, whoa, I'm still trying to figure out what we were doing last week, and now we're doing 5 new things, and it's a lot. But it's an interesting thing to navigate, for sure, because then at the end of a crazy week, you're like, I'm alive.
Yeah.
I survived. Oh my gosh.
We're here. It goes so fast. And I think that's the other thing. When you're working on these big projects, I think time feels like it goes by faster. Because you have these big milestones. And, I feel like the last 3 years have gone by so fast. And there's so many projects I have backlogged. I have 40 videos I have to finish.
Oh, man.
So many things I have to finish. And that's not including the album I'm working on. And everything else it's just insane, and that's all floating in my brain all day. I feel like my brain is just chaos all the time right now, because I'm thinking about all the things I have to dupe.
Yeah. Is this something that you kind of had your eyes set on for a long time, or was it like, oh, I'm getting good, and now I'm getting noticed, and oh, now it's my job?
I definitely really wanted to be an actress when I was
Mhm.
younger. I wanted to be in film, and I've done some film work, and I've been in some independent films. So that's still a dream of mine, but that's definitely where I thought I was gonna go. You know, I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to be, you know, or on Disney Channel. I wanted to be a Disney Channel star when I was like 5.
Didn't we all?
Yeah. And then, you know, wanting to go into that world was my big dream. And then I didn't really think that I was good enough to be a musician for a really long time. I was in choir,
Mhm.
and I taught myself instruments, and it was really just a cathartic, emotional thing for me until I was about 16 years old. I played my first coffee shops, open mics, started playing in bars, and I really enjoyed it. And when those things started to be more successful and I started to get better at it, it became more of a dream, you
Mhm.
know? I just didn't really think I was good enough for a really long time.
Yeah. What kind of made you believe in what broke that, like, self-doubt?
I think it was definitely, I gained confidence the more that I performed in front of people, the more that I got better. And I definitely did not start out amazing. You know,
Mhm.
it took time, and I'm still growing and learning. And I think it was just when something goes really well, you know when something goes really bad,
Mhm.
and you know when something goes really well. And the more that those moments where a song goes really well and somebody comes up to you after the show and they're like, wow, you know, that song meant a lot to me, or brought me to tears, or you know, thank you for performing that song. And those moments, and realizing, you know, hey, I'm doing this and meaning something to these people, and people are relating to it, and I'm connecting. And you know, maybe I made a few flubs in that song, and I played the wrong chord in that song, or messed up in this way, but I nailed that song, and it felt really good. And I feel like if I can just get better, maybe I can do that for a whole show. And
Mhm.
you know, almost all the songs will be really good. And it just made me more confident and wanted to keep trying and keep getting better. And I started out not being that good, so I got used to making mistakes
Mhm.
on stage, you know, and working through that to get to the other side of it. And so I think I've seen that growth and that it's possible.
Yeah.
And so I know that I can get to where I want to go. It just takes time.
When you're on stage and you do mess up, how do you play it cool? Like, what's that like?
It's hard. I think you just have to be okay with laughing at yourself
Mhm.
and acknowledging it. I think the most awkward thing is when people make a huge mistake and then pretend like it didn't happen. And then their face turns red, and then everybody feels awkward, and the audience feels awkward, and it's
Mhm.
just this collective awkwardness. And I think one of the biggest things about it is just acknowledging it, even if it's with a little laugh, or, you know, making it something that you and the audience are like, oh, yeah, this just happened.
Mhm.
That's okay.
I think
It's
I've mentioned it before on the podcast. Like, when you kind of get to put out your own insecurities at front, like when you're the one to address it,
Mm-hmm.
literally everyone is just, they can't hold it over you anymore. So it's just like, haha, we just shared a little moment. Look at
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And it makes you human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going, like, from not being this your job to this being your job, what would be some stuff you would tell someone wanting to get started who wants this to be their job?
I think one of the biggest things I've seen in the industry in both music and film is that there are people who believe in themselves right away, and they put in the work behind themselves. And then there are people who don't believe in themselves enough. They want to do these things, but they don't think that they're good enough. And so they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and they use their time, all of that energy inside them, supporting other people instead,
Mhm.
and being on the sidelines. And I think the most important thing you can do is to take the risk of believing in yourself, because you're putting in that effort and that time anyway, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else. So you might as well be learning and growing as an artist yourself, and believing in yourself, and putting that time and that energy and that money and all of that effort behind your own dream. Because then in 10 years from now, instead of being like the most amazing support in the world, you'll
Mhm.
be the most amazing you in the world, you know? So I guess that would be my advice.
That's some strong advice for sure. Because I've seen that a lot, especially like I've known a lot of people who say, I really want to, but, and then there's a list of things, and then it's like, well, if I help you do X, Y, and Z, well, then will you do it now? And they're like, no, I don't know. But once you do kind of see someone being like, you know what, I'm just going to try it, see what happens. Yeah. Amazing things happen.
Exactly. Well, and if you think about it, there's so many things. Like, I think we hold ourselves accountable to this really high standard. And we think, oh, we can't be a musician unless I'm at least this good. You know, I'm not as good as XYZ, so I couldn't be a musician. But then you think about, like, there's people out there who are just barely starting, but they're out there and they're putting themselves out there, even though, you know, maybe it's not very good. Maybe they mess up 20 times, but they're out there, and the only difference is that they're believing in themselves and they're taking that risk right away, you know? And I think you gotta take that jump, and you gotta do it. I have a friend who I really believe in, and she's a writer, but her whole life she's been doing other jobs because she doesn't believe that she could be a writer, you know? And she's so good, and it's just about taking that, and that step is hard. So find a way to make the step, and it's really surprising to me when you do take that step and things start falling into place, because it's, you know in your gut what you're supposed to be doing, and it's just really hard to, the unknown is hard, and the idea of possible failure is hard, but I guess once you've failed enough times, then it's not so scary anymore. Like, failure isn't that bad, you know? Failure means that you tried, and failure means that you believed in yourself enough to try. And I was reading something about confidence and how to build confidence, and there's this thing called like 100 days of rejection, and that you just go around and you ask people ridiculous things that they have to say no to, so you get used to the idea of rejection, and it becomes easier to be confident because rejection isn't so scary anymore. And I think that's part of it too. It's just the fear of rejection and failure, because those are scary things, but once you get past those things, all you have is the possibility of something beautiful.
I see a lot too is a lot of people, they are definitely afraid to even put in the first try, because they're worried that like that first failure will end the future. But what I've noticed is, like, especially like when I was getting started in graphic design and definitely video, like at the time you do something and sometimes designs just don't connect with people. And that's also another thing about creativity as a living is it's super subjective.
Totally.
But like some things don't connect with people, and other times like it is objectively bad. Let's say like the video like is shaky, it's out of focus, like you literally can't see anything. The design is oversaturated, you can't read what it says, like whatever. But the second you kind of get after that one, it's immediately like you then know what to do next time.
Absolutely.
And some people give criticism way better than others. And there's a way to take, like, I hate it, or you could do this better in better ways. But it's kind of, making the first failure is actually a good thing, because the second you do it, you realize like, oh, well, I'm still alive, so that's fine.
Well, and I think as a species, we are wired to focus on negative things, because that means something needs to be fixed. And so our brains, even if you receive like 100 compliments and then one negative comment, your brain is only going to focus on that negative comment. So you have to sort of reteach your brain to celebrate the positives, like, okay, maybe the video was shaky and oversaturated, but what I said in the video was really good, and and my confidence was really good, and like learning how to accept the positives and the negatives and not just the negatives is a really hard thing to do, but it's something that I'm working on too, because I do that after shows. I'll think about all the little things that I did wrong, and I missed that note, or I said the wrong thing, or I shouldn't have done this, and instead of saying, oh, this thing was great, and these things went really well, and I did this right, and it's a challenge.
It is a challenge for sure. I think as artists, whether you draw, paint, play music, make videos, whatever, it's really about like rolling with the punches and understanding that one mistake is not the end of everything. So, well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Where can the audience find you?
I'm everywhere. If you can spell my name, Maiah Wynne. You can find me anywhere online, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. I'm even on TikTok now. I'm really bad at TikTok.
Man.
It'll probably disappoint you. I'm also really bad at Twitter, but I'm there. So if you want to see my horrible tweets or boring TikTok account, find me.
I hope you get 1 million followers from this.
Me too.
Well, I'm excited for your show tonight, and thank you again for sitting down with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And cut.
Woo!